Well, welcome to the program and thanks for joining us. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Begin in the United States, where the race for the Nevada governorship, U.S. Senate race, and 3 congressional seats remain uncalled, with tens of thousands of mail ballots still to be counted in Washoe and Clark counties, which make up 90% of the votes in Nevada. An election official says the ballot counting process, which will decide the results of key congressional races in Nevada, will stretch out for at least another 9 days. Clark County Registrar of Voters Joe Gloria told reporters that mail-in ballots would be counted as long as they are received before Saturday, November 12, and that the process of curing ballots and unclear signatures and verifying provisional ballots would continue into next week.
The mail will continue to process every day, and the cure processing takes place every day as well. Currently, on the website, which is available to the general public, we've got 9,579 people who have been entered into the cure process. Of those, 5,396 have not yet cured their ballot. That number will continue to grow until we're finished processing mail ballots. We have 14,718 mail ballots that weren't read last night that will go in today. Those will be reported in the evening when we release our new results report on the website. The USPS pickup for today was over 12,700 ballots.
Just to mention that the Senate contests in Nevada and Arizona are as yet undecided. Thousands of uncounted ballots still outstanding in both states. In the meantime, hundreds of thousands of votes still remain uncounted in Maricopa County in the state of Arizona. Election officials in the state's most populous counties say it could take until at least Friday to tally all votes. About 400,000 votes in Maricopa County remain to be counted, even with the race for governor and U.S. Senate uncalled, with about 70% of votes tallied. During her election night party, the Republican candidate for governor of Arizona, Kari Lake, told her supporters that the people running the show in Arizona were incompetent. But her Democratic opponent, Katie Hobbs, had a different message for her supporters.
How do you get fair and free elections? You have to fight and win to make them fair and free. And we needed another stark reminder that we have incompetent people running the show in Arizona.
Don't do what Trump did.
Who is ready for a change? We had great patriots around this state show up today. It was so amazing. They showed up at the polls early this morning, only to be told the election equipment didn't work. 2 minutes into voting, we had people being told, well, you're going to have to put your little ballot over here into another box. Guys, the fake media back there tried to tell us we were wrong for asking questions about our elections.
We know my opponent and her allies have been sowing doubt and confusion throughout this campaign. And it's unacceptable that they were spreading misinformation today while people were exercising their freedom to vote. I have every confidence that the counties administering this election conducted a free and fair election, and their results will be accurate. But they will take time. So prepare for a long evening and a few more days of counting. Now that the campaign is over and polls have closed, the county election officials are hard at work tabulating those votes, and they're going to be tabulating them for the next few days. I know that we're all eager to find out who won each of these incredibly important races, but we need to be patient and wait for every vote to be counted. Because every single vote matters, and every single vote counts equally. Whether you voted by mail, dropped off your ballot in a secure drop box yesterday, or voted in person today.
Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock will be heading to a runoff on December 6 against Republican former college football star Herschel Walker, who's endorsed by former President Donald Trump. It comes as both failed to clear the 50% threshold needed to win in the first round. It was confirmed by Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. Walker had been hampered by a series of scandals. Remember allegations of domestic violence? He's a vocal anti-abortion advocate. His campaign was rocked by reports that he paid for multiple former girlfriends to have abortions in the past. His opponent, however, Warnock, who serves as pastor at the Atlanta church, once led by Martin Luther King Jr., won a surprise victory in a special election in early 2021, giving Democrats control of the U.S. Senate. And depending on the results of ongoing Senate races in Nevada and Arizona, the final results in Georgia could determine the control of the Senate.
We saw Georgians from all over the state cast their ballots to make their voice heard. There is one race in our state that is going to be moving to the December 6th runoff. That is the race for the United States Senate between Senator Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. Our office has already begun the behind-the-scenes work to start building the ballots. So ballots are being built as we speak, and counties are making preparations.
And as President Joe Biden, speaking Wednesday night, says he intends to run for re-election and would likely make a final decision by early next year. He's also declared results of Tuesday's midterm elections good for democracy. President Biden, himself a Democrat who turns 80 this month, has faced questions on whether he will seek a second term. He says the intention is to run again, but ultimately it is a family decision and he does not feel rushed to make a final decision. He says he would do so unrelated to any announcement from his 2020 rival, Republican former President Donald Trump, who's also expected to run in 2024.
Down from 6.4 when I... Our intention is to run again. That's been our intention, regardless of what the outcome of this election was. The fact that we won, I didn't run, the fact that the Democratic Party outperformed anything anyone expected and did better than any off-year presidency since John Kennedy, is one that gives everybody like, whew, sigh of relief that the mega Republicans are not taking over the government again, et cetera. And my judgment of running when I announce, if I announce, my intention is that I run again. But I'm a great respecter of fate, and this is ultimately a family decision. I think everybody wants me to run, but we're going to have discussions about it. And I don't feel in any hurry one way or another to make that judgment, today, tomorrow, or whenever, no matter what my predecessor does.
Early next year, or what's your thinking?
My guess is, I hope Jill and I get a little time to actually sneak away for a week around between Christmas and Thanksgiving. And my guess is it'd be early next year we make that judgment. But it's my plan to do it now. I mean, but,
2/3 of Americans in exit polls say that they don't think you should run for re-election. What is your message to them, and how does that factor into your final decision about whether or not to run for re-election?
It doesn't.
What's your message to them? To those 2/3 of Americans?
Watch me.
Who do you think would be the tougher competitor, Ron DeSantis or former President Trump, and how is that factoring into your decision?
It'll be fun watching them take on each other.
Let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, President Biden is turning 80 this month. By 2024, he will be 82, and he still wants to run another term?
Yes, he's been very that he never stated that running. He stated that he planned to run when the time came, and so I think that on the onset of his running for the first term that he's in. So I think that those who have found him have also prepared themselves for what a second term would look like. As we know that all presidents in the U.S. go through a very extensive physical exam regularly, and so I think that's what he will continue to do, and I think that the American people will not be surprised of his running again in the next election cycle.
Pretty interesting. But he's finally declared he will be running, of course, but he says he'll make a final decision in January. We heard him saying he hopes to sneak away for the Christmas and the New Year celebrations and then come back with a message, final decision, which he will be making, of course, with his family before announcing whether he will or will not be running. Isn't this sort of message a bit confusing for the Democratic Party? I mean, you have a president who intends to run and then says he'll be making a final decision in the next couple of months. Where does that leave the party? I'm a little confused even hearing that myself.
To be very honest, I think the American people, and especially the Democratic Party, are very glad to see that we've had a very clean election cycle and the democratic process was not questioned to the extent that we saw last election cycle. And so I think that was the first hurdle to try to come over. I think who will be the next candidate, I think that conversation did not even happen over the last few months, and to be honest, almost the last few years. And so I think he's saying speak to his wife, but he's really going to be speaking to the Democratic National Convention and those Democratic leaders around what is going to be best for the Democratic Party. Will it be him or will it be someone else? And so I think he's being very careful as to how he communicates whether or not he'll be ready for re-election. I think for himself, he would love to run, but the question is that going to be best for the Democratic Party?
Yeah, indeed. And Georgia goes into a runoff, race being too close to call between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. Georgia did have some problems in the 2019 elections, the one that brought President Donald Trump into office. And then we also had Carrie Lake once again discrediting the electoral officials and also discrediting the elections. And then she calls out, what she calls the fake media and so on. Why does Georgia have so much problems, Maria?
Georgia was traditionally a very red state. It was very Republican. You kind of could not break that cycle. But what we've seen over the last few years is that the people of Georgia have changed. They've changed their ideologies. New ideologies have moved into the state. You don't have as many of those older Georgians who kind of have lived there generation after generation. It's become a very large city, Atlanta, Georgia, for example. And so you're seeing a different type of person in that community. And so you're beginning to see Georgia potentially moving to the side of blue. Now, whether or not we're going to see this election cycle, but it is predicted that at some point Georgia might not be able to stand on its Republican values and being a red state for much longer. And so that's where you're seeing some of these very contentious and tight races. As we know, Leader Abrams went out to go for governor once again and was not successful. But just the mere fact that she was potentially going to be the next governor and that the race was as close as it was, and to have the level of support that she has, goes to show you that Georgia is definitely evolving and the residents of Georgia are changing.
They must be, and there are still yet more races to be called. And here in some states might take up to 9 days to finally collate and certify the results. How many more are we looking at?
But really right now, the attention is on Nevada and the attention is on Arizona. We know that Georgia, we have to wait till December the 6th. But Arizona and Nevada are those two states where all eyes are on. And depending on how that goes over the next few days, I think it's very likely, as I heard your reports earlier state, that we'll be into next week. We could be looking more toward the end of the month, that we won't see any real results because, as we know, we're still hanging with the balance of power within the Senate and within Congress. We know the House is inching a little bit toward Republican, but it's not yet confirmed that it will be majority Republican in the House. But we definitely know the Senate is going to need both Arizona, Nevada, and probably very likely Georgia.
And will this impact on, who eventually leads the House and the Senate? Kevin McCarthy, who had been brought forward as the possible Republican Speaker for the House of Representatives, but with election still expected, election results still expected in, will that impact on, who becomes leader of the House and who eventually controls the House before then?
Yes. Yes, that will have a heavy impact as to who exactly, as we've seen, it's kind of leaning toward the House might be a Republican run, but we're not still. We still have a few more election results to come in to verify that. But as soon as that is verified, you will begin to see whether it's the Democrats or Republicans identifying that individual. And if it is the Republican Party, as you stated, Kevin McCarthy has been that individual who has been penned to state that he will be running for that seat to be Speaker of the House. Now, if it's the Democrats, it's been also very clear that Nancy Pelosi will likely not be the Speaker of the House come the next cycle. And it's been stated that Hakeem Jeffries is leading that and potentially would be that Speaker of the House if it was a Democratic majority.
Maria, thanks for bringing us up to speed. Let's check in now on COP27 summit holding in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. The impacts of climate inaction are claiming lives and livelihoods, and it is the people who are least responsible for the climate crisis that are bearing the brunt of it. The words of Elizabeth Watuti, founder of Green Generation Initiative, who watched in dismay as natural habitats, including Kenyan forests, close to her childhood home, suffered extensive damage. Now she's turned to her life activism.
6 years after starting the environmental advocacy group, Green Generation Initiative, Elizabeth Watuti is one of Kenya's most ardent voices in the struggle against climate change. A voice she's hoping will be heard by world leaders gathered in Egypt for the COP27 Climate Summit.
Then we have to ensure that there's a great representation and participation of the voices across the African continent, and not just the participation, but it has to go further beyond and make sure that the outcome that we get out of COP27 has a reflection of the present needs of the African continent.
And it is the people who are least responsible for the climate crisis that are bearing the biggest brunt.
Watuti was one of the young people calling for urgent action as the UN Climate Conference marked its traditional Young and Future Generations Day.
Failure of industrialized nations to meet their climate targets is actually a gross injustice to the young people, to all generations, and also to the people that are on the front line of this crisis. Because for us, we are not waiting for the impacts to hit in the future. It's happening right now. We are in a climate emergency.
Watuti is just one of several people or groups being creative about their views on the worsening climate crisis. She has channeled her frustration and sadness over the damage to natural habitats, including Kenyan forests close to her childhood home, into a life of activism. COP27 started in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt on November the 6th and is expected to end on November the 18th.
Protesters continue to gather at COP27 to call for the need to protect human rights to achieve climate justice as world leaders converge on Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. So wearing white, which was previously announced as a move to show solidarity with Egyptian political prisoners, protesters chanted and raised banners reading "No climate justice without human rights." Leading the chant at the protest, activist representing women and gender constituency Gina Cortez Valderrama called out names of activists jailed due to political activism. The protesters there chanted, "We have not yet been defeated," and the title of a book authored by jailed Egyptian British activist La Abd El Fattah. His family has been campaigning for his release since COP27 began.
For the closing space for civil society.
There are certain rules about the way this space operates, and so many people talked about the fact that the communities that cannot even get to COP because they cannot get accreditation, they cannot afford the flights and the price gouging that is going on here, the accommodation prices. So there are so many people that are excluded from this space, and one of the ways that people are excluded from the space or excluded from their own communities is incarceration. We had people who were previously incarcerated incarcerated who spoke at the event today. So we are in solidarity with Egyptian prisoners of conscience, and we say that political prisoners need to be freed everywhere because they are standing up for the planet, they are standing up for human rights, and that is essential. We need to have a space to stand for the planet and to stand for human rights. Every one of us should be doing that.
Today we are here to unite our voices and make a collective call to all the people, all the states, all the companies, all the citizens, that there is not going to be climate justice without human rights, that we are not going to get out of the multiple and intersecting crises that we are facing today if we do not shift the oppressive, colonial, and patriarchal systems that have been undervaluing the lives of those that struggle in resistance for a life in dignity for all. We are standing here strong for those voices of the women that have been carrying in their shoulders the system of capitalism, of outsourced labor.
Staying at COP27, Frankie the dinosaur toured the media center located in the Blue Zone, where the United Nations Climate Change Conference is taking place in Egypt. Frankie is urging the world to not choose extinction. While wearing a sign around his neck, Frankie and the UN observer who accompanied him says he's there to take urgent climate action. The Utahraptor dinosaur, who has previously toured the UN headquarters in New York, sent a video message in Glasgow, the host of COP26, and stopped by to visit Egypt's pyramids in Giza before arriving in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Going inside. Say goodbye. Sonia, I think you should. Sorry?
Interesting. A rare November tropical storm has hit land in Florida. Hurricane Nicole arrived today with 70 miles per hour winds, but has been downgraded now into a tropical storm after it slowed on making landfall. States of emergency remain and evacuation orders are in place, with heavy rain and storm surges forecast. Nicole has already lashed Grand Bahama Island as a huge Category 1 hurricane, with the scale of the devastation not immediately clear. Storms of this size so late in the year are extremely rare. After Florida, Nicole is set to hit Georgia and South Carolina next. It could possibly even hit Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York later in the week. November hurricanes are rare in Florida since record keeping began in 1853. A Sunshine State has been hit by only 2 in 1935 and in 1981. South Africa and Kenya have resolved long-standing visa disputes, meaning Kenyans will now be able to visit South Africa visa-free up to 90 days in a calendar year. The new agreement, set to take effect on January 1st next year, was announced by the presidents of both countries in Nairobi, Kenya. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa made his first official trip to the country. South Africans already get free visa on arrival in Kenya, while Kenyans are charged and required to provide proof of sufficient funds and return flight tickets. Ramaphosa and Kenyan President William Ruto also praised the Ethiopian peace agreement signed last week in South Africa and brokered by the African Union, appealing to the parties to ensure full implementation of the agreement.
We laud the just concluded agreement between Ethiopia government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, brokered by the African Union and mediated by President Olusegun Obasanjo and Uhuru Kenyatta and former Deputy President of South Africa, Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka.
As many of our countries on the African continent are currently suffering a great deal from the ravages of climate change, as you correctly pointed out, The droughts that Kenya is experiencing now are unprecedented. And similarly, the floods and the droughts that South Africa is currently experiencing now are unprecedented, and this just goes to show that climate change is serious, but at the same time we need to make sure that the more developed economy countries that have contributed greatly to the climate damage should be the ones who carry the burden of making sure that the loss and the damage that developing economy countries like South Africa and Kenya are properly compensated, and that those countries live up to the commitments that they have made.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Now, we'll move on to other stories now. Still here on the continent, but as regards the continent, beg your pardon, far away in Dubai. On a lighter note, African fashion designers looking to enter the Middle East market will soon have a platform dedicated to them, as organizers of the Africa Fashion Week Middle East announced plans to kick off in 2023.
African designs on display at the Innovation Hub, DIFC, as organizers of Dubai-based initiative Africa Fashion Week Middle East give industry stakeholders, influencers, and the press a taste of what the platform is set to bring to the fashion scene in the region. This soiree is the first step towards bringing the event, first imagined in 2020, to life.
And we realized that there is a gap in the market where we could actually create a solid, sustainable platform to encourage and engage with the best of creatives of Africa to come and find their spots in the Middle Eastern markets.
Tando Magumise, a founding partner and fashion designer, has lived in Dubai for a decade and understands the need for such a platform created to support brands like her Untombi Couture.
The vision is not just a short-term vision of come and see a fashion show, oh, that's lovely, and walk away. The vision is let's create a platform that allows African designers to tell their own stories, empower them through the platform, and extend into the global market. You will find that a lot of African designers, it's not about the talent not being there. They have everything. But breaking barriers to entry is not the easiest thing. So platforms like this are very important. And I also think because we understand and come from that culture as well, we can marry the two because we've been here a long time. We understand how the global market works. So we can actually be an enabling system for these designers whilst also relating to where they're coming from.
New brand Kiza Bespoke's arrival is perfectly timed to be part of the showcase.
That was when Kiza Bespoke was born.
Africa has a lot of story to tell through their fashion, the culture and all that. And a lot of fashion is derived from the environment. So what we're looking to do, apart from making suits, we also use local fabrics to express our ideas and our thoughts. We also look at how we can mix and match the international flavor with the African touch as well. So we're bringing something completely different into the Dubai space, and I'm so excited about it. And I believe the market will be so happy to have us add to the flavor.
And South Africa's Palesa Mukbang also took turns on the runway. The first edition of the Africa Fashion Week Middle East will hold in Dubai come February 2023. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, Maya Wadegoke for Channels Television.
It's beginning to feel like Christmas, isn't it? Well, if you're in Paris, maybe. That's because iconic Printemps department stores have kicked off the holiday season as they unveil the traditional Christmas store windows featuring colorful circus figures, hanging gardens, and playful clowns. The department inaugurated its 11 Christmas windows on Wednesday night with supermodel Naomi Campbell and Oscar-nominated actress Isabel Huppert as guests of honor. Stars posed in front of the windows as acrobat puppets swung behind them. These displays, which took 3 weeks to set up, include elements drawn up by Low designer Jonathan Anderson. They also feature a total of 3,400 meters of garland lights that will illuminate every night throughout the Christmas holidays. The light inauguration comes amid a worldwide surge in energy prices that has prompted stores to turn out lights earlier and rein in ostentatious displays of past governments in a push for energy-saving measures. Printemps CEO Jean-Marc Ballot said Printemps has taken measures to reduce its holiday energy consumption, including switching to LED lights, turning off all store lights after closing hours, and reducing the opening hours of the Christmas displays by 20%. Well, those windows are a shopaholic's delight, and they are sure to bore a hole in your pockets. Just remember that. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Bani.